everyone, welcome back to alkaline hydroxide 784, and today for the TDBTP we are going to cover GP paper 2, and once again I'll try to keep this within about 10 minutes to 12 minutes around there. I don't want to make it too long. Okay, so the day before the paper you will, of course like I mentioned in the paper 1 version, the paper one, you know what I mean. You'll be quite nervous, and you have certain questions on how the paper might turn out to be, because I've also mentioned that my A-level paper was a bit unusual to me as well. So yeah, don't overthink it. Don't think too much about the paper itself. Focus on seeing whether you've actually completed all of your revision. Just look through you can look through your exams once again, or if you have a strategy, just think through your strategy and make sure that you're set for the paper in the sense, because once again strategy is important for GP, I guess. So for paper 2, you have 3 sections, which is the short answer, the summary, and the AQ. And because of the 3 different sections, some people will get stressed, because what if they take too long in the first section, then you don't have enough time for the other 2 sections. And that is why you must strategize, obviously. If you strategize to allocate this much time for each of the sections, then you can first proceed to the next section, and after finishing all the sections, if you still have time, then go back and finish the rest of your unanswered questions. So that's one strategy. The other strategy could be, another important strategy would be to first skip questions that you do not know the answer to, and then later on answer the questions when you have the time. Because obviously if you look at the question and you're just stumped by it, you're obviously going to spend a lot of time being stumped by the question. So let's say you look at a question, if you already know that you cannot immediately find the answer in the passage somewhere, or if it doesn't strike to you, then I suggest you do the other questions first. But if you're willing to take more risk, you can spend about 30 seconds. If you really cannot think of an answer, then move on. Don't waste too much time, because in paper 2, time is of essence. It's not like paper 1 where you actually will have quite a bit of time to finish the paper. So yeah, you should allocate your time wisely, I guess. Okay, then for the individual sections, SAQ, make sure that you, the day before the paper, do look through the different question types, revise how each question type is answered once again. Just go through it in your head, or if there's any question type that you're unsure of still, then look through your notes, see if there's an answer to that. If not, if you do encounter a question that looks really unfamiliar in the structure, try your best. Just look at it in a literal sense. Just see the question, think of what comes to your mind, and then follow your mind to answer the question, of course. But there shouldn't be anything out of the ordinary. Just the only thing that might be unusual is what exactly they're asking for in terms of the content or the part of the passage that they want you to look at. And do remember that some SAQs are like mini summaries, and they require you to write like 5-6 points inside the 3 lines or 4 lines provided to get your 3 marks, I guess. So do be aware of such questions, and you can practice. And if you need to practice, you can, but I don't know how far you'll get with it. So focus on looking through the papers and looking at sections which you are a little bit weaker at. Just make sure you know what you're doing, in a sense. So yeah, and also think of how much time you want to spend on the SAQ based on your past experience and based on how fast or slow you are at that section, and also the other sections. Okay, then for the summary, yeah, of course, summary is based on how well you read the passage and everything. So make sure to read the passage as much as you can when you're starting the paper. And of course, and from personal experience, you never really get all the information from your first reading. But at the same time, if you read the passage 2-3 times even before you start the questions, it may not be as efficient as reading it once and then you look at the question, and then you read the passage again, and then you can take note of where all the answers are once you, and then write them down as you read the passage. That's my way of doing it. Some teachers will advise you to read the questions first and then read the passage. You can do that too. That's okay as well. So if you read the questions first, read the AQ part, and then read the summary, and then finally read the SAQ. It will be a bit more cohesive that way, because the AQ is like the overall topic. Then and the summary is somewhat topical as well. And finally, the SAQ are more detailed. Alright, so once you finish reading the questions, you'll be doing your SAQ, which I mentioned earlier what you should take note of, the question types and all that stuff. And after you finish the SAQ, like you finish reading the passage a bunch of times, you've done the SAQ, then you move on to the summary. And in the summary, you should be aware of which part of the passage you're actually focusing on. Otherwise, well, yeah, that's the most important part about it. Because sometimes there might be a paragraph that you miss out by chance, because it may be like, maybe it will say paragraphs 4 to 6 and 9 or something. And if you forget about paragraph 9, then you just missed out on a bunch of potential points, because some of the paragraphs will have easier points than others, like points that are easier to find. So please do take note of every last paragraph, and also if you want, you can just note it down right from the get-go. Like once you see the question, you can do like a little bracket with your phone, sorry, pencil, not your phone. I do not know why that came into my head. Okay, with your pencil, and it's easier for you to reference it when you're doing the SAQ as well, because the SAQ won't really interfere as much in the summary, and the AQ you can use points either within the summary part or within or outside as well. Okay, so for the summary, the other thing that you need to take note of is of how much you're actually paraphrasing it. And sometimes my strategy is to just paraphrase that entire paragraph, because I do not know where exactly the points are. But if you do know where the points are, then don't paraphrase everything. Do leave out the examples and the stuff that mean, like, the stuff in the brackets, or stuff like, oh, this means da 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 da, like the description. Leave those things out and only put the important stuff inside, because it is a summary. It's not like it's not just a paraphrasing of the paragraph. You know what I mean? Yeah. And then once you're done with the summary, make sure you have the right number of words, like don't have too many words. And also don't have too little words, like don't have like 80 words. That's a little bit too little, I think. Yeah, make sure to have at least 90 to 100 words. And yeah, once you're done with that, you should move on to the AQ. And in the AQ, you should remember what the AQ means, application question. So you should remember that in your head as you're doing it. Remember to write down your observations, whatever examples you can think of, and apply that to whatever point that you have found in the paragraph. So if you already have a general idea of what points you're interested in doing, you can just mark them out while you're reading the passage, and then it makes your job easier at the end. But if not, you can do it later. Once when you get to the AQ, you can just go and quickly find out points, because by that time you should have a general idea of what the passage is about and where all the different points are. So once you found your point, get to planning out in which order you want to write about your points, in the sense, because it's not just one point but multiple arguments made by the author in order to support their stand for the main argument for the passage, in the sense. It's like how you write your GP essay, you have a bunch of points to support your main argument. Likewise, the author will also do the same. And once you identify which points you want to look at, you must make sure you know what is your main argument in the AQ, whether you mostly agree or mostly disagree. I say mostly because saying completely agree isn't gonna be true. You definitely will have some part which you disagree, or some context in which it doesn't apply. So it is better for you to just write mostly, or um not on or yeah, mostly agree or mostly disagree, and also point out where you actually agree or disagree, if it in terms of the exceptions, in the sense. And exceptions is what will give you your nuance. Like, for example, a certain segment of society actually has a different behavior compared to the other parts of society in Singapore, maybe, and you can use that in your examples as well. So yeah, so for AQ, you don't have to worry about not knowing enough newspaper textbook kind of examples, because as long as you have a decent observation, or I mean, you still should know enough stuff about Singapore in order to write it down. Like, if you've been living here your whole life, you should know. Yeah, so use whatever you can think of, that whatever you've seen, whatever you know beforehand, and you should be fine. And be very careful about the exact question that is being asked in the AQ, because it may not always be the exact, like, it's not always the same format. Like, if you see the 2018 question, you know what I mean. It's like it's a little bit different in the way that they phrase the question. So you should follow the question, even if you feel a bit cheated or feel a bit weird when you do it. Just do it, just follow the question. That's the important part when it comes to the exam. Yeah, so I hope I hope this helps you. When you go into the exam, just be calm. Yeah, of course, before the paper 2, you would still be nervous about paper 1. So just forget whatever you did there. To be honest, I don't even remember what I wrote in my GP essay. So yeah, just forget it. Just forget whatever you did there, and then focus on paper 2. That's the best way to tackle exam. Just forget whatever you wrote after the exam, and then just move on to the next thing. Yeah, so I wish you the best of luck for your GP paper 2. And of course, if you found this useful, you can subscribe, I guess. With that, I would like to say thank you and bye.